Hello and welcome back to our channel. In this demo, we are going to discuss how to test ASP.NET Core Web API endpoints using Swagger UI and how to enable authentication in Swagger UI. Let's start. Before run the application, make sure that our SQL Server instance image is running a Docker, and let's start the application and see the response, and let's see how the API endpoints are listed inside the Swagger UI. So let's call an endpoint and see the response. So this is our events get endpoint. So here we can get all the events. And before calling in any endpoints, we have to click this try it out button to activate that particular API endpoint. And if there are any parameter required, we have to add that. For an example, so if that particular request required any ID or something like that, we have to add that, or else that endpoint required any request body, we have to use that. And since it's a get request without parameters, we just need to execute it, so we can get the response. In here we got the 401 response. It seems like we are unauthenticated because our application itself authentication enabled. So we have used JWT token to authenticate our application, but our Swagger UI did not get any authentication mechanism yet. So let's see how we can add authentication mechanism to Swagger UI and then test our application. Make sure that there might be a confusion. I have seen people got confused with the configuration of JWT token and the Swagger UI configuration. If you see the existing code, these authentication adding and the 8 JWT bearer configurations are configuration to add authentication to our ASP.NET Core API application. That means if you hosted this application on a server, or if you are running this application on a local host, when we connect it to a front end, there we have entered the username password that will call authentication endpoint in our application, and that will return a token. That token can be stored in a local storage of that particular browser, and that token will be used for upcoming API calls. This is the usual workflow. So now our application has a mechanism to create a token and send to the front end whenever it required, calling the authentication controller endpoint. So that is fine. So let's imagine now we are going to test our application via Swagger UI. So therefore we have to have a mechanism in our Swagger UI to enter the tokens, or enter ourselves in authenticator. That means we have to enter the token to make ourselves authenticated inside the Swagger UI. For that, we have to add the security requirements. So let's see. Imagine, so what we have to do is in our Swagger UI we have to tell that, so these are the requirements we have required for the authentication, and what kind of security requirement. So the security definition and the requirements. So first we have to define the definition. Based on that, what kind of requirement we want. And if you see in the previous demo we have discussed how to we can describe Swagger UI more with the options like adding the description and other details. Same way we did adding XML comments to our Swagger UI to give a meaningful information to the tester. So in this demo we are going to add the security mechanism to our Swagger UI by adding a security requirement and the definition. Okay, first we have to add the definition. So security definitions, we are going to add security definition. For that add security definition. All right, so we are going to use bearer. So we are going to give a name called bearer. So if you see this intelligent support, so when we use the method, it will suggest something and it will give what kind of methods or arguments or parameters that we have to add for that particular method or a method call. So here, so we are going to give a name called bearer, and we are going to add a new open API security scheme. Then let's add some configuration there. One is a description regarding let's see, with the help of intelligence we can able to auto generate it. So you can put any description whatever you want, and where we have to add the token inside the header. Make sure that when we calling in any endpoints, we have to add the token inside the header, so that can be used when we're using a third-party testing tool like Postman, that we will discuss in upcoming demos. So let's add a name for this authorization. Okay, and type security schema type security scheme type HTTP, not API key, it's HTTP approach. Okay, now we have to add bearer format. That should be JWT, JSON Web Token. And the scheme bearer. All right, so now we have add the definition for our authentication. That means the security definition we have added for our Swagger UI. Let's add the option to add security requirements. So these are the requirements that our Swagger UI expected. So add security requirement. We are going to add a new open API security requirement with a dictionary list or list. There we can add many as we want, but in this demo purpose we are only adding a single one open API security scheme. So let's add a new open API security scheme. We are going to add as a reference, so new open API reference with type and the ID. Reference type is security scheme, and ID will be bearer. Okay, that bearer will be consumed here, and yeah, that's it. And also we can have a new string to add. If we want to add an OpenID authentication with scope, we can configure that further with the new string list. Since our application, that particular this demo not require that kind of stuff, we are just leaving it as an empty list, empty array. So this configuration is enough for us to enable authentication in our application. So let's run and see how it comes. Okay, now if you see here, we have authorize button. So there we have to add the token to get ourselves authenticated. Before that, we have to call the authentication endpoint. So if you see that in the previous demo, we have added the sample request using XML command. So that XML commands give us what kind of requirement and what kind of request we have to use for this particular endpoint, and what are the sample response. So let's add this and call this endpoint. Make sure you have enabled try it out, and you have to add the username password you have added here. Make sure we should enable Swagger UI in the development environment only. Let's assume you are adding a sample request as your production URL, production credential, and you enabled Swagger UI in the production, then it will be a huge vulnerability to your application. So make sure that this Swagger UI we use for internal testing purpose. So make sure that what are the environment variable you are selecting inside your program CS, that we need to very concerned about it. Alright, so we just call the API call, and we got the token. That token should be okay. We got the token. That token should be authorized by adding that to authorized mechanism. Now we have authenticated ourselves. Let's try to call an endpoint. So here we have API events endpoint. So it doesn't require a parameter and not require a request body. Let's try to call it. Alright, so we call this endpoint and we got this response. The list of events, since we have only one list, one event, we have only one object. Okay, so we got that code is 200 success. So imagine how we can add a parameter. So now if you see this particular events contain, this is the ID of this particular event. So we are going to call an endpoint with a parameter and see. Or else try with delete. Okay, so let's try to delete this event by passing the event ID. So this is one example of passing a parameter to an endpoint. Let's see, yeah, successfully deleted. So if you call the get all endpoints, sorry, get all events again, we will get an empty list, yeah, empty array, because even this particular response is success. This is 200. Since we don't have any events in our database, actually that there is no events, it is returning an empty array. Okay, the response is 200 success. Let's try to create a new event. So we now so far we have discussed how to add get API. So these are the HTTP method: get, post, put, delete. Right. So let's try to post an event. So let's imagine at annual AGM meeting, and I'm very lazy to type the 204. I'm copying 2k 24204 and I leave the rest of the things as a default value. Let's try to edit. We have successfully created a event, and let's try to get the speakers of this particular event. So we have to pass the parameter to find the particular event. So there are a lot of events, but we want to get the speakers of one particular event. So therefore we have to add the ID of that event. Let's execute it. If you see here, we got 200 response, but the array list is empty because we haven't add any speakers to this particular event. Alright, so that's all about the calling endpoint using Swagger UI, and we have seen how to enable authentication in our Swagger UI and how to get and store the token into a Swagger UI. And then we saw how to call an endpoint using Swagger UI, creating a post event, get with parameter. So in upcoming demo we are going to discuss how to use a third-party tool like Postman to test our endpoints. Let's see. If you see here, okay, this is the website to get the Postman downloaded. So you can download the Postman here and be ready with the upcoming demo. So there you can use Postman browser, or so you can use it the browser one, or you can use the desktop one. So I would prefer to go with the desktop for the first time. You will get more enhanced features. Not like Swagger UI. Postman is a purely separated third-party application. That means Swagger UI, we know that we have tie up with our code. So our application code logic itself contain a way to enable or disable Swagger UI and configure it, everything. But Postman is a purely third-party application that we can use for test any endpoint API endpoints. So that's all about this video. In this demo we have discussed about how to enable authentication in Swagger UI and how to test endpoint using Swagger UI. And everyone, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. In next demo we will discuss how to use Postman to test ASP.NET Core Web API endpoints. Okay guys, see you all there at that video.